Sadly, yesterday, it became evident that not only has the president abdicated his duty to protect the American people and the people's house, he invoked and inflamed passions that only gave fuel to the insurrection that we saw here. When pressed to move and denounce the violence, he barely did so, while of course victimizing himself to give a wink and a nod to those doing it. All indications are that the president has become unmoored, not just from his duty, nor even his oath, but from reality itself. It is for this reason that I call for the vice president and members of the cabinet to ensure the next few weeks are safe for the American people, and that we have a sane captain of the ship. Section 4 of the 25th Amendment allows a majority of the cabinet and the vice president to assume the duties of the office of presidency until the president is able to himself. It's time to invoke the 25th Amendment and to end this nightmare.
Okay, and we're putting up, as we have the congressman's pronouncement today, we're putting up the tweet of Newt Gingrich, one of the quote-unquote president's closest allies. And Jack Max, you want to read that for our podcast and for our radio audience?
I will. He says, someone's taking down. Vice President Pence was a profile in courage yesterday. He understood that his oath was to the Constitution, not to party, policy, or person. He did what he believed was right, and he did so under enormous pressure. Whether you agreed with his actions, his courage deserves credit. Okay. Now, my immediate response to that, Steve, was that we know what kind of courage that Mr. Gingrich is attracted to because we've seen the courage of his wife as the ambassador to the Holy See, as our church has been sold out to the Communist Chinese.
You think she should have stood up as an ambassador and said something about that?
I absolutely think she should have at least expressed some lack of confidence to the American people instead of going out and having pasta every night.
But let's go back instead of getting personal. No, Madeline Peltz. We're not. Jack and I are actually very close. We're just like brothers. We argue a lot. But to go back to him, what about? Do you believe Mike Pence is a profile in courage?
No, I do not believe that Mike Pence is a profile in courage. In fact, I think we've been seeing Pontius Pence, Judas Pence. These things are all over the internet. One of the things that I was so offended by yesterday were two comments. Kelly Loeffler's, I cannot in good conscience. Please stop talking about your good conscience. You don't have a conscience. Because if you had a conscience in the morning and it changed in the afternoon, that is called a weather vane, not a credo. And then we also had Vice President Pence. Remember, yesterday he called his function in the Senate largely ceremonial. And then he stepped far outside of ceremony, as we heard from Professor Eastman, and denied the very regulations that he thought he was just ceremoniously following. So I think that I've said for weeks that today was the Feast of the Epiphany, and we've had a great reveal as to who the cowards are who lead us.
Raheem, but hang on, you were very upset, Maggie. I want to make sure we get you in. You're very upset at Brother Cortez, who's one of our mainstays in the MAGA movement. Why?
Look, I appreciate what Steve Cortez was saying, but he's saying we need to focus on 2022 and we need to elect and nurture, people of courage, intellect, and people with media skills. But I have to say my feeling is there's not going to be a 2022. The way they're taking out people on social media, there's not going to be an opportunity for people with media skills, people like myself, Raheem, others. If we're going to continue and carry on down this path, I'm absolutely outraged. I'm shaking. That's how upset I am right now.
Why? Because
about
of what
the statement
Facebook?
From Mark Zuckerberg.
Go back and give us. You had to cram it in there. Give us a statement and tell us the impact of this.
So Zuckerberg has come out with a statement saying that Facebook and Instagram are going to block President Trump from using their services indefinitely. This is tremendous. I haven't done a check, but he has millions of followers on both of those platforms. And this is his way of speaking to the American people directly, and they can just silence him. The statement is basically this from Mark Zuckerberg. The shocking events of the last 24 hours clearly demonstrate that President Donald Trump intends to use his remaining time in office to undermine the peaceful, lawful transition to power of his elected successor, Joe Biden. The decision to use his platform to condone rather than condemn the actions of his supporters at the Capitol building has rightly disturbed people in the U.S. and around the world. And I just have to say that's a lie. The statement, the video that President Trump put out yesterday was calling for peace and asking people to go home. Look, he was saying this isn't the way that we deal with things by acting out violently. So I don't understand why that message wasn't allowed to be heard, but it's because the media controls social media and they don't want people hearing that President Trump is calling for peace.
Look, they've gaslighted the country for the last 5 years, and we don't have any reason to believe that the following 5 years or 10 years is going to be any different without serious changes in regulation behind who polices the truth. Now, right now, as you say, Maggie, Mark Zuckerberg is making an allegation that just simply is false. It's false in the minds of anybody who saw President Trump's video. It's false in the minds of anybody who was out there yesterday. It's false in the minds of every fair-minded person who looks at what President Trump said and what he asked his followers to do last night when the curfew was announced. But I do feel differently than you about that of a media platform because Facebook is creating its own death knell with this. Most of their users are older people who are fairer-minded, who don't believe in censorship, who don't believe in Marxism, right? And Facebook is now, with this move, going to see just millions upon millions of more people shift away from using their services.
But Instagram too.
I understand, and they will pivot completely over to Instagram as a service now because that's going to be younger people and et cetera, et cetera. But here's why I don't believe that it is an existential crisis for conservative media types is because look at what the last 4 years of censorship and gaslighting and all of that has done. It has elevated conservative voices. It's increased conservative innovation in these areas. When you look at free speech platforms are now more used than ever before. Video, new networks are popping up every single day. New talent is emerging every single day. Yes, we need to get off their platforms. Yes, we need to turn our backs on them completely. And yes, the innovation is now there that we can take it out there ourselves and create our own mechanisms by which to reach people. And guess what? If that fails, then we will congregate people on street corners with megaphones, and I will carry around a soapbox. Because
I'm with you there, Raheem, but I'm just so worried because I look at Parler, I look at Gab, banned from the App Store, right? Parler is not the most user-friendly app, and all it is going to take is for
neither was Twitter when it first came out, by the way. Do you remember how bad it was to use? I think, look, do not get dejected, but here's some signal for you in that Kinzinger comment. Who convinced Kinzinger to run for Congress?
I don't know.
That would be one Congressman Mike Pence.
Connect the dots.
Wow.
Profile and courage, Mike Pence. I don't think so. But by the way, this whole thing of loyalty is not to President Trump. It's not about his loyalty to President Trump. It's about his loyalty to the Constitution and loyalty to the country. I think that's what Eastman was getting to about this fundamental misread, and then to let all these procedural to make all these procedural changes later that were all just to add to the beatdown, right? It wasn't to allow further discussion, to allow more evidence in. It was very planned to allow more pontificating and more of the beatdown, more of the hand-wringing, okay? And we're not justifying what went on. And we're going to get into that hopefully with Bernie Kerick and Jack Posobiec. But I want to go, can we play, do we have time? I want to play the Gates. This is what, if you missed it, and this is what we anticipated and you could have had. If we can get the Matt Gates clip up, let me know when we got it. Clip 2, let me know when Denver's got it. This is a taste of when we got. Let's go. Let's play Matt Gates, and this is a taste of what it could have been for 12 hours yesterday. Let's go.
Objection.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes without objection.
Madam Speaker, one of the first things we did when the House convened today was to join together to extend our grace and our kindness and our concern for a colleague who has experienced just an insurmountable amount of grief with his family. And I want all of our fellow Americans watching to know that we did that because we care about each other and we don't want bad things to happen to each other. And our heart hurts when they're due. Now, I'm sure there are plenty of folks over there who don't like me too much, and there are a few of you that I don't care for too much. But if anybody had been hurt today, it would have been even more of a catastrophe than we already saw. And I think that's an important point for the country. Another important point for the country is that this morning, President Trump explicitly called for demonstrations and protests to be peaceful. He was far more, you can moan and groan, but he was far more explicit about his calls for peace than some of the BLM and left-wing rioters were this summer when we saw violence sweep across this nation. Now, we came here today to debate, to follow regular order, to offer an objection, to follow a process that is expressly contemplated in our Constitution. And for doing that, we got called a bunch of seditious traitors. Now, not since 1985 has a Republican president been sworn in, absent some Democrat effort to object to the electors. But when we do it, it is the new violation of all norms. And when those things are said, people get angry. Now, I know there are many countries where political violence may be necessary, but America is not one such country. Madam Speaker, it was wrong when people vandalized and defaced your home. It was wrong when thugs went to Senator Hawley's home. And I don't know if the reports are true, but the Washington Times has just reported some pretty compelling evidence from a facial recognition company showing that some of the people who breached the Capitol today were not Trump supporters. They were masquerading as Trump supporters and, in fact, were members of the violent terrorist group Antifa. Now, we should seek to build America up, not tear her down and destroy her. And I am sure glad that at least for one day, I didn't hear my Democrat colleagues calling to defund the police. Now, I appreciate all the talk. I appreciate all the talk of coming together, but let us not pretend that our colleagues on the left have been free of some anti-democratic impulses just because we signed on to legal briefs and asked courts to resolve disputes. There were some on the left who said that we should not even be seated in the body, that we ought to be prosecuted, maybe even jailed. Those arguments anger people, but people do understand the concepts of basic fairness. And no competition, contest, or election can be deemed fair if the participants are subject to different rules. Baseball teams that cheat and steal signs should be stripped of their championships. Russian Olympians who cheat and use steroids should be stripped of their medals, and states that do not run clean elections should be stripped of their electors. This fraud was systemic. It was repeated. It was the same system, and I dare say it was effective. We saw circumstances where when Democrat operatives couldn't get the outcomes they wanted in state legislators, when they couldn't get the job done there, they went and pressured and litigated and usurped the Constitution with extra constitutional action of some officials in some states. They fraudulently laundered ballots, votes, voter registration forms, and then they limited review. In 2016, Democrats found out that they couldn't beat Donald Trump at the ballot box with voters who actually show up, so they turned to impeachment and the witness box. And when that failed, they ran to the mailbox, where this election saw an unprecedented amount of votes that could not be authenticated with true ID, with true signature match, and with true confidence for the American people. Our Article 3 courts have failed by not holding evidentiary hearings to weigh the evidence. We should not join in that failure. We should vindicate the rights of states. We should vindicate the subpoenas in Arizona that have been issued to get a hold of these voting machines, and we should reject these electors. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose is the gentlewoman from Colorado speaking?
Okay, over the next couple of days, we're going to play more of this. You've got to hear this. This is the debate that should have taken place for 12 hours yesterday. We're going to be back with Senator Ligon of Georgia in a minute.
Bannon. The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room. Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, since the whole theory of the case here is that it's the state legislatures that are the key in selecting these electors in an official and fair and legal process, it is the state legislatures. We had Senator Jake Corman on from Pennsylvania yesterday, the president pro tem of the Senate, head of the Senate there, talking about his letter he had sent. We've had Mark Finchem, although just a representative, on. We're going to have guys from the Senate try to get Mark back in here at the end of the show, talk about the letter they sent. The head senators on it. And now we have Senator Ligon from the state of Georgia, and he chaired a subcommittee that actually held and took witnesses and took facts and has looked into this. Senator Ligon, just I think for our audience, because we're trying to be as fact-based as possible, What's your perception, and where do you stand when you heard this evidence that was presented about what happened in the state of Georgia in this election, and then where are we in your process?
Sure. Well, after our hearings, I felt that the legislature should have been convened to hear what we heard, and to if necessary, if I felt necessary, look into it further, and then make a decision on whether or not the election was fair, and if it was not, if there was misconduct or fraud or irregularities that would have cast the result of that election in doubt, to withdraw the electors and then elect a new slate of electors. We saw
go ahead, sir.
Tremendous amount of. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go. You continue on.
Okay. Yeah. For example, even in the time leading up to the election, when they were prepping the ballots, there were testimony that there were test ballots and printed ballots just laying around a warehouse, not secured. The lady that testified to that was extremely concerned about it. She had been an employee of the Fulton County Board of Elections for 9 years. She's been fired. Then during the counting process, there was the same thing that happened. There would be boxes of ballots that showed up that did not have a seal on them or that did not have a chain of custody. Then, of course, we all saw the video of what happened at the Fulton County, or at the State Farm Arena in Fulton County, where the press and the observers were told to leave because counting was going to be stopped, and then counting continued for another 2.5 to 3 hours. And certainly enough ballots were counted during that period of time, which could have changed the result of the election. But it wasn't just isolated to that arena as well. There were many other monitors that were denied either entry into the building or denied the opportunity to have meaningful access to even see what was going on. There was another 20-year worker that reported on this, and she even indicated that she saw absentee ballots, which looked like they had been printed. And, an absentee ballot is filled out, and you use a pen to mark it, and then you fold it and you put it in the mail. And she said there were some stacks of ballots that looked like they'd been printed, they had not been folded, and, they were introduced into the voting system. So there's just a tremendous amount of irregularities. We have had reports of people going to vote and being told that they'd already voted, absentee ballots being sent to addresses to people that had not been affiliated with that address in over 20 years. So it's just been a mess. And one of our witnesses characterized it as chaotic. And certainly in some of our areas of the state, it was very chaotic. And in the areas and that was particularly so in the areas that had a lot of votes in the metro areas. And it just has created a lot of concern and anger over this election in our state.
So, Senator, let me ask you, we have two Republican officials, Raffensperger and Sperling, who the Secretary of State and his deputy, I guess, is in charge of this. They say, and they're putting up charts all the time, that this is baseless, there's no evidence, this is all fantasy, whether it's a phone call with the president and or other people that go down there and try to talk about it. That's a pretty big spread between the bid and the ask. I mean, do you agree that these are baseless charges? Do you believe that these are allegations that have no evidence? I mean, you chaired the subcommittee. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely not. We heard from the people firsthand that experienced, these things. And the one lady, Ms. Susie Boyle, she had been an employee for 20 years. She was very, very credible. And she articulated everything that I just said about what she saw and observed with ballots. So I just, I don't know. I don't see how they can say that. And, of course, she's been fired for telling the truth. And, the danger with that now is that when you go and you work at these polls, you take an oath. You're supposed to be honest and above board. And if you see something wrong or irregular, you should say something about it. And so now will this have a chilling effect on other people who may see irregularities during the election process? There's a lot of cleanup that needs to occur in this state, and I'm hopeful that will happen in the coming session.
Senator Kelly Loeffler was here. She had promised on the stage with President Trump that she's going to stand with the president, at least in the people of Georgia, to get to the bottom of this in be 2 hours of testimony in the House and the Senate for Georgia. And then yesterday, they came back after the incident of yesterday afternoon, and she says, because of the incident, we're just going to take a pass. One, what are your thoughts about that? And number two, did we need 4 hours, 2 in the House and 2 in the Senate, to put before the American people what the facts were here in Georgia?
Sure, I think that there should have been. They should have had more than the 4 hours. They should have expanded it, because there's a lot more that I'm sure from other states across the nation that could have been discussed. They could have spent 10, 12, 13 hours on Georgia. I mean, that's what we held, and I don't know why she did that. I know, I guess maybe just out of fear. I don't know, but I know that there were a lot of instigators to what happened, that Antifa and other anarchists that disrupted the hearings that they were having and just caused the mess that occurred yesterday. But I also know that there were hundreds of thousands of patriots there that were peaceful, that are concerned about their country, that love America. I met a group of ladies from Cuban Americans, and they were telling me that they just don't want to see this country go down the road of Cuba and all of that they've experienced. And so just to ignore just the vast number of people that were there and were lawfully and were expressing their sentiments, gathering to petition their government, which is part of our heritage as Americans. It's enshrined in our founding documents. I'm sorry to see that.
Senator, last time, we're pressed for time, but we got about 2 minutes left. Just the question is, given the situation in Georgia, given your subcommittee, the report you did, it's still look. Congress last night did certify the Biden electors from Georgia. But where do we stand? Where do we stand? Particularly, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported that they had gone throughout the state. There was not one Republican voter, not one they could find, that did not feel this election was stolen or illegitimate. That's the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporter. So you're a state senator. Where do we stand with this situation? This is kind of a constitutional crisis. What is going to happen in Georgia?
Well, the legislature convenes on Monday. I would hope that they take this up. I did not run again. I'm retiring after 10 years of service, so I won't be there. I don't know. You may see some resolutions to file to decertify the electors to try to take some sort of action. I think there's that aspect of it. There's also the aspect of what are you going to do to restore the confidence in our process of holding elections here in this state. And I can tell you there's a lot of work to be done. They need to undo that consent order that the Secretary of State entered into, revisit what can be done to ensure that those using the absentee ballots are really the ones voting, that they're legal votes. I think that there are a lot of illegal votes, and I think that this mail-in with the absentee ballot process was abused. So, there's looking back, what can we do about that? But there's also the part about looking forward to restore the confidence in our system in Georgia.
Senator Ligon, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time away. I know you're traveling back from Washington. Senator Ligon from Georgia. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
You talk about a mess. You talk about a constitutional crisis, because I know there are people actively talking down there. That's why I want to have Ligon to set the predicate. He's a decent, hardworking guy, not a fire breather, obviously, right? And he wrote that report, had that subcommittee. But a lot of people in Georgia are saying, hey, we want to move, when they come back, to decertify the electors. Hey, this is a one people have to understand, in the establishment, in the media elites have to understand. The American people are very focused on this. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I think I saw it in Axios, right, had a reporter said they had gone throughout on the Senate fight. They had not talked to one Republican voter on November 3rd, 2003, that didn't think the election was either stolen, illegal, or illegitimate, right? And right now you see the polling it's 46, 48%. Any quick notes we got about 30 seconds here?
Well, I just want to add this. Do the powers that be think that is going to get better or worse by shutting the conversation down? By the live chat being shut down, by the Facebook being shut down, by the Twitter being shut down? Do they think that sentiment gets better or worse?
They think it's just going to go away.
As one of our people in the hashtag War Room Pandemic said, the night of the digital long knives has begun.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're back with Bernie Kerick and Jack Posobiec of One American News. Bernie Kerick, former police commissioner of New York City, in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. We have some breaking news, Raheem.
Yeah, this is Chuck Schumer just now, Senator Schumer issuing a statement on the back of Adam Kinzinger, Mike Pence's friend's statement calling for the 25th Amendment. Chuck Schumer says the quickest and most effective way it can be done today to remove this president from office would be for the vice president to immediately invoke the 25th Amendment. If the vice president and the cabinet refuse to stand up, Congress should reconvene to impeach the president.
So they're calling for impeachment, essentially, if they don't get the 25th Amendment. It's a throwdown. Yeah, go ahead.
We've been saying this for a long time, Mr. President. If you are listening, your followers are out there. We still love you. And what we want you to do is spend the next 2 weeks opening up the books, declassifying the information that has been held back from us that will prove the righteousness of your cause and show to the American people the dirt that lurks inside this swamp.
And we should put forward the people that held back you doing this when we called for it years ago, right? We should find out who around you kept sitting there and saying there should be these massive declassifications that are fully justified. Okay, I want to now turn to Bernie Kerick about the incidents yesterday. Do we have Bernie's videos up? Okay, Bernie, we don't have the videos, but I want you to describe, and I'm going to get Jack Posobiec in a second. Can you describe what what your concerns are of what went on yesterday as a former police officer?
Well, Steve, first of all, I was at the rally there with the president and the mayor, and I have to say, I've heard people say tens of thousands of people. I'd say it was close to 1 million people between where the rally was and the other side of the Washington Monument. It was completely peaceful. Nobody was yelling, nobody was screaming, no fighting, no nothing. At some point, when the march went down to the Capitol, there was two elements that went into the Capitol. One, a group of Trump supporters that were let into the Capitol by the Capitol Police. There's videos, a number of different videos online where they open up the barricades and they actually let these supporters, appear to be Trump supporters, let them walk into the Capitol. It's on. There's a number of them online. In fact, I tweeted one of them out. Then there's another group, and the other group evidently breached a secure portion of the Capitol, got into the Capitol, and then went crazy. So I think a couple of things have to be asked. One, why did they open up the barricades and let this group of people walk into the Capitol when they had this the process going on there? And two, why is there only 13 arrests? If there was a mob rule that breached the Capitol, there should be far more than 13 arrests. I thought there
were 50. I thought there were 50 arrests. You're saying there was only 13 inside the Capitol, from what you've been
last night they were claiming 13. I didn't see the numbers this morning.
I think the numbers are 52, but that may also be around town, so I don't know. Let's go back to the thing, and we're going to bring Posobiec in here a second. Mm-hmm. Bernie, let's go back to when you say let them in. I mean, they had the barriers, and look, being up on Capitol Hill, the nation's capital, when they lock down that space, they lock it down. I mean, for a State of the Union, you got to walk over to the Hart Building, get searched, take a train, get searched on the other side, come up into the Capitol, get searched again, go through screenings. It was pretty evident that, I mean, they had some barriers, but it was like the bicycle rack kind of barriers. When you say let them in, you do agree, as the videos you've seen, the guys look either overpowered. I mean, it's not like a normal day where they're letting people up and go through the screening. It looks like
No, Steve. There's an actual video of the Capitol Police removing the barrier, pulling the barriers to the side, and letting people in. And immediately after that, you see a number of the Trump supporters walking through the rotunda of the Capitol, basically within a rope line. They're not storming the Capitol.
Okay, what I got to do is and maybe get Bernie back at 5. I got to get those videos up and have Bernie talk to those videos. Bernie, can you just hang for 1 second, because I want to bring Jack Posobiec in, and then I want to think. Do we have Jack Posobiec? Can we get Jack Posobiec on here? Is he on yet, Cameron? Mm-hmm. Okay, hey Jack, do you hear us? We're doing some producing live on air. Jack Posobiec from One American News.
Yes, I'm here.
Now, Jack, I don't know if you had a video too, but I want you to talk about. There's all this controversy about Antifa. Look, you saw around here, it looked like, and there may have been Antifa instigators, and we're going to get to that. But this was a big MAGA march coming up and all the other MAGA marches we had been peaceful, right? The 1,000,000-person march, and then the one that was smaller in December had been peaceful, right? And the one in November had been. I don't think that was as big as this. I think this was actually maybe bigger, which stunned me. The size of this crowd was bigger. I didn't see the president's. I watched the entire speech. I didn't see anything in the president's speech that instigated that at all. He said he was going to go up to Capitol Hill, but I thought that was all. The whole plan was to go up to Capitol Hill for a redress of grievances, right? Like the other two marches. They all end up right over there at the Supreme Court with speakers, and I think there were speakers with a bullhorn somewhere near here. So, Jack Posobiec, make your case. You're saying that you felt, and we had Michael Yontu, who's going to come in this afternoon. He says there's Antifa elements to this. Walk us through what your thoughts are about this whole thing.
There for all the rallies that led up to this. I was there all day yesterday, both at the speech and then later at the Capitol, actually walking by with Raheem after the show and hearing some of the initial flashbangs go off just feet from where we were when we were standing. I then stayed out there the rest of the day, or sometimes on the roof across the street from the One American News studio. And what we saw when I was inside, as close as I could get, basically, was there were certainly people who were agitating. I'm not going to go so far as to be able to speculate as to who they were, but I've got video of people with bullhorns going to Trump supporters, and these guys, in some cases, were not dressed in any particular clothing, or they might be holding a flag, but it was mostly nondescript, either green or black, saying, rush forward, you need to move forward. A couple of guys doing that. Climb up the wall. You saw people dressed in black climbing up the wall and really trying to instigate this crowd at one point. And we do have video of this as well. I'm trying to get it over. We're going to put it up today, that you can see people banging on the window. And I haven't been able to timestamp it yet, but I believe that this appears to be the initial entry. So there's people banging on the window, and then there's people in the Trump crowd that are actually booing them, that are pulling them off, telling them to stop.
Yeah. When are you going to get? Because jump in here, guys. When are you going to get that up? That video.
Barricade 1 is ready now.
Bernie's?
Yes.
And they're saying, and by the way, I just want to jump in here. They're saying in the video, Jack, that you've just sent me, and we're going to make sure that we play it here as well. They're saying, that's Antifa, right? I can hear that in the video.
Right, you can hear those calls out in the video, people yelling about Antifa. Again, it's only a couple of seconds video, so it's very hard to be able to fully say what exactly was going on. Yet you can definitely tell that at that point in the crowd that there were people who wanted to be there peacefully, and there were people who wanted to agitate. Now, whether those are members of a specific group, that still remains to be seen, but we definitely know that the vast majority of people there were not interested in committing violence. They wanted to be a peaceful march, just like all the other marches have been in Washington.
Okay, Jack, I want you to hold on and bring back Bernie. Kerick, can we play Denver? And we apologize, we're kind of making this up on the run. Can we play Bernie's tape? And I want Bernie to yeah, you can talk over it, Bernie. This is the one about your gate that was moving away. What should the audience be focused on here, Bernie?
I think what you see is you see the police, you see the Capitol Police. They're pulling barricades aside. They're stepping aside. And somebody in the forefront is waving these people on. These people then go into the building. The Capitol Police wasn't trying to stop them. They didn't push them back. They actually moved the barricades. What were they doing? Where was this? So that's one of the things I saw. But I want to touch on Jack's point. I also saw that video where the guy was beating on the window with some kind of mallet, and you had people jump up from behind him yelling that he was Antifa, grabbing him and pulling him away from the window. So you have that kind of stuff as well.
Let me ask you, in the time we have left, Bernie, you, and I'll come back to Jack. Given the fact that when you're in lockdown or you know there's an event happening as important as this electoral and as controversial as it is, and that people are already worked up, would you've had more of a? I mean, you look at that and you kind of laugh when you think about the security that they put up for State of the Unions and other things. I mean, this is like 1/10 of it. Would you have had a bigger police presence? Would you have had more security?
They were definitely, without any doubt, Steve. They were undermanned. They were not prepared. I don't know if they just thought these were Trump supporters. They're not going to get. I don't know what they were thinking, but they definitely weren't prepared. And you can see that in different parts of the Capitol, inside and out.
Jack, I want to come back to you. This whole aspect of this was Antifa driven. What evidence are you relying upon to make those statements?
Well, I wouldn't make the statement that it was Antifa driven. I don't think we have enough evidence at this point to be able to say anything like that. But you can say that certainly there were agitators there, some of which have been identified as members of some far extremist groups that aren't associated with the president, aren't associated with the broader MAGA movement, people who are not organizers, people who were not speakers at any of the events over the preceding week, but who came in. And largely we saw this in many cases, as we talked about, with in a similar paradigm. We saw this with some of the BLM marches, which started out peaceful, and then you had Antifa come in and commit violence within them and use it as sort of a cover for them to be able to do so. That's a lot of the same kind of dynamic that we see here, that people who came in who actually intended from the start to commit crimes, and those people are going to be rightfully identified. They're going to be found out who was doing the agitating, who brought bullhorns, who brought tactical equipment to be able to break windows, to be able to go in and do things like this, and who instigated this. And I believe the FBI has already put out a statement specifically asking for those instigators to be identified, or anyone who has information about that to come forward.
Jack, thank you very much. What's your Twitter handle before we go back to Bernie?
At Jack Posobiec, JCKPOSOBIEC.
Jack Posobiec, One American News. Thanks, Bernie. One thing, you're very close to Mayor Rudy Giuliani. We got about a minute left. What would you say to the MAGA crowd that tunes into the show every day? What would you say where we are right now, and what would you say? What would your recommendation be?
Listen, no violence. Nobody reverts to violence. Should be none. But I think if you support the president and you supported him yesterday, I think you still have to support him today. He's done a tremendous job for this country, and I think people at times like this, especially when the media is trying to blow this stuff up, they tend to forget that.
Bernie, what's your Twitter handle? Social media? How do people get to you?
Bernard Kerick.
And your WABC radio show is when?
Saturday afternoons, 2 p.m.
Saturday afternoons, 2 p.m. with Bernie Kerick. Bernie, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Bernie Kerick, former police commissioner.
Thanks, Steve.
The wingman. Any comments before we go to a break, gentlemen? Jack Maxey?
No, just, you see Bernie Kerick, right? This is a real man, real tough guy. And he was there, and he's giving you the straight story. And I think that people need to listen to it. I think we've had too much over the last 24 hours of conflating what happened yesterday with our movement.
Okay. I just want to make sure that everybody is saying a prayer for Ashley Babbitt and Ashley Babbitt's family.
This is the Air Force veteran, 14-year Air Force veteran, shot and killed yesterday in the nation's capital. We're going to return with the team in a team discussion on war and pandemic in just a second.
We rejoice when there's no war. Let's take down the CCP.
Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
There's a 14-year Air Force veteran, correct?
Yes,
Shot down
with 4 tours in the sandbox.
4 tours. Okay, we're going to get into all that in the evening show, and tomorrow we're not going to forget that. We got to drill down on all of it, the Capitol Hill Police. Also, this is what I kept saying. You can't live in fantasy. You must be focused. We all want to fight, but don't. What did the president say in the thing? Don't play into their hands. Don't play into their hands. Don't play into their hands. It's not fair. There's a higher standard against us. We understand that. You know, the world's not fair. Life's not fair. The House is what, 5-7 against, right? So the House is always stacked against you. Life is not fair. We are held to a higher standard. We're held to a tougher standard. Everything we do is tougher. You know, you don't have the shows, you don't have the social media, you don't have the celebrity. That's just the way it is. Go watch 12 O'Clock High. Life is not fair. Okay, you're put here in a certain place and time, right, by divine providence. Understand it's not fair. Yes, it is a different standard, and I got that. But this is about winning. This is about focus. This is about being maniacally focused. Maggie, before we get to John Frederick's breaking news out of Georgia, Maggie, you got something?
I don't have breaking news out of Georgia.
No. I got John Fredericks does.
Oh, yes. Well, very exciting. Okay. Good to be back with John.
Okay, John, what do you got for us? And by the way, is this news or speculation, rumor, or do I have a real John Fredericks type hook in this?
This is news. Thank you. I just got an Amber Alert on my phone. That's why that was clicking there. But thank you, everybody. And Steve, I agree 100% with what you said. We are held to a higher standard. Very well said, and we have to focus. You're absolutely right. This is just a new day. But here's what's going on in Georgia right now. With all the news going on, this got missed. So in a hearing yesterday at 4 o'clock in front of a Henry County judge, the effort of one individual, Garland Favorita, with his organization, voterga.org, got granted another hearing on Friday, January 15th. Let me tell you why this is so critical. The judge gave Fulton County 1 week to respond to the allegations made and the brief made by Garland Favorito's organization. Favorito is 90% sure they're going to get clearance on January 15th for them to do a hand and forensic inspection of Fulton County ballots on the mail-in ballots. Let me tell you what this means. They believe, based on affidavits under perjury, that there are 20 to 25,000 to 30,000, 20 to 30,000 fraudulent ballots. Now, I'm not talking about ballots that maybe didn't have a signature or somebody didn't have an address or came through a drop box. I'm talking about ballots that you printed, that were made up, that are attached to no voter, that came in because it was on pristine paper that doesn't match the ballot paper, number one. Number two, it wasn't folded. Number three, in the people that did the affidavits, the ballots were not marked by ink or pencil. They were marked by a machine. Now, if they do this forensic analysis, which they say will take them no more than 48 hours to get it all straightened out, if they find, Steve, and Maggie and Raheem and Jack, if there are 25,000 of these ballots that got scanned into the system that are 100 completely fraudulent, here's what it means. David Perdue is going to sue immediately. There shouldn't have been a runoff. He would have gotten over 50%. That's the end of John Ossoff. Here's what it else means. Biden didn't win Georgia. That 16 flips might not affect the outcome of the presidential race, but here's what it's going to do. If this is true in Georgia, if this happened, and it's proven, you have to start asking yourself, did it happen in Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan? These are the questions that are going to have to be answered. But the first effect it has is on Senator David Perdue, because they're going to be able to sue immediately and say, every one of these ballots is made up. I won.
Okay,
the election
John,
on November 3rd, the runoff shouldn't have
You
been
just gave us breaking news. We're going to drill down on this. We're going to get sure. We want to make sure we're going to get you back on at 5. We're going to reach out to Purdue's campaign and others around there. This gets back to the heart of what John Eastman said at the beginning of the show. It was to hold for 10 days. That's why Pence's preamble was wrong. It was to hold for 10 days so that we could sort out situations like this. This is a fiasco now.
Yep.
And it's a fiasco because the mainstream media and others jumped the gun. It was something this important with the country this divided and this hot. We kept saying it's a wound that would not heal. We've been people trying to put salve on the wound. And that salve is to show evidence, etc., so we can get to a better place. John, I want to thank you very much. We're going to have you back on in the evening.
Thank you.
This is why I'm never going to let this one go. You can't let it go. I talked to a guy in Wisconsin last night. I have tremendous respect and establishment guy. And he admits, he says, yes, the IC's totally, the election in Wisconsin, he's one of these typical nice Wisconsin guys. I go, how can you live with that? He goes, actually, I can't live with it. I said, yes, you can. You're trying to move on. You can't move on. We have to drive the stake in the ground here. I understand what happened, YouTube. Yes, we had Safe Harbor, we had Electoral College, and last night at 3:46 in the morning, Joe Biden was certified. His electors were certified in the election of November 3rd, 2020. I know this is going to make people's heads blow up, but there's still work to do. And we're going to do that work here at the War Room. We're not going to give up on this, okay? And we don't chase. I'm not looking for servers on the moon. I ain't looking for gun battles in Frankfurt. I'm not in the fantasy business. I'm in the fact business, and we're going to get to the facts. I want to appreciate everybody this morning. Any closing comments? We've got about a minute, guys. Raheem.
But I want to appreciate...
We didn't even get to anywhere near the clips we're going to get to in the next couple of days.
I want to appreciate everybody who peacefully protested yesterday, because those people are still in Washington, D.C. They're still going to be out today, and I just want to remind everyone the importance of comporting yourselves well and making your case robustly heard.
Your power in November and your power that's why they fear you. You freaked this town out in November when 1 million of you showed up, and it was upbeat and it was powerful. Maggie.
Yeah, there were over 1 million people there yesterday, and it was 99.9% peaceful. I was even over at the Capitol, and most of the people standing there were just watching, mouth agape, myself included, at people that were storming the doors.
Jack.
Quick prayer out to Ashley Babbitt and her family. You know, she's a fellow service member, Air Force veteran, and
she's
prayers to them.
She's going to be buried with full military honors?
I certainly hope so.
Okay.
She deserves it.
We got to check into that. Okay. We will return at 5 o'clock. More updates from Georgia and the whole ballot situation down there. See you then. God bless.